How are you? How are you? It's so good to see you.
Good, likewise. I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, man, I have so much I want to ask you about. We were going to talk for, no more than an hour, but well, just, man, goodness, I'm so excited to see you. It's so good to see you again. Let me see. So we had an event on Thursday that was at the John Paul II National Shrine. So they invited us to be there, and they said, would you like to set up a table and hand out, And I said, yeah. So we had the the JPEGs that you sent me. We had them printed out with the QR code and the whole thing, and we had we were just giving them to everyone. Like, here, buy
Oh.
this, go get this book, and these are people like with the archdiocese, with Catholic University, with Theological College, with the John Paul Shrine. And I was saying, hey, we have the Native American Affairs at the USCCB and the Committee Against Racism. We have a new resource, an official resource. It's this book. You should check it out. And we was just telling them all about it and handing out the flyers and everything. So everyone's all excited, going, "Oh yeah, this is really great!" And there's this one kid who was there with his parents, and he kept really looking at it, looking at the pictures and everything. And I was like, "Hey, you should tell your parents to buy you that." And it was so funny. But okay, I don't know if there's ever been a podcast where people just laugh the whole time, but
They'll probably be
that
ours.
might be today. That might be today. Okay, so I am here today with my good friend Maria Desjardins, who is an awesome, awesome person. And I have been saying that for a long time, but I've been texting, emailing, speaking, calling, and otherwise promoting that message specifically for about a month and a half now. I'm so excited to have Maria here with me this morning. And so Maria is a member of the Arikara Nation of the Fort Berthold Reservation in North Dakota, and also the Anishinaabe from Red Lake in Minnesota. She's also a school teacher. She lives in Chicago. She has a family, and she is also Catholic. And she is also a really, really, really awesome person, which I know I already said that before, but I'm gonna say it again before the conversation's over. And so Maria has just written this amazing book, a children's book called "I Am Not a Costume," which the Native American Affairs Office, my office of the USCCB, and also the Ad Hoc Committee or Subcommittee Against Racism at the U.S. Bishops Conference have both adopted as official resources that we're using and advocating. So I'm so excited to have Maria here with me today. And in the interest of letting her talk instead of me just talking through the whole time because of how excited I am, Maria, why don't you tell us about yourself, introduce yourself, and just say anything and everything you want to say about yourself, your life, your family, your book, your everything.
Sure. Oh my, that might take a couple of sessions.
Well, we have time. Well, I'm a priest, so you don't have to pay me. I'm not like a therapist. So like you're not on the clock. You just yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for inviting me on. My To my people, I'm known as White Cedar Woman, which is Dasa Daka. And I was born in Chicago, but raised on my grandma's reservation in Fort Berthold, North Dakota. And I went back and forth. 'Cause my parents had a pretty messy divorce, so I got to be dragged back and forth a lot between the two areas. And because of that, I feel like I kind of got mixed up a lot. And I would see, I would go back home on my res, and I was very fortunate that a lot of my teachers were also Native, and
Mm,
they would teach us, um, you know, not from books. It would be all of their history and their knowledge from that was passed down to them. So I was pretty knowledgeable because of that. And then when I would go home, well, I would go visit in Chicago and see my grandma and my dad that were still there. And when I would stay with them and I would go to school there, I would be so confused as to why I seen people like at Halloween time dressed up as um what is supposed to be indigenous people,
Mm,
the crafts that we were had to make, to that teachers thought were honoring our people, which
mm,
weren't, and things of that nature. And um, I remember talking to my grandma a lot about that, and she's full blood Arikara. She went to boarding school, and I had a lot of stories from her about that. And I'd be like telling her, I'm like, Grandma, why why does this look like this? Why is this happening? And she would, tell me like, well, they just want to pretend to be like us for the day. And I would be like, why? Why why would people want to do that? I just was really confused by it. She would come to my school sometimes and talk and tell a story, but nothing would ever change, even though my grandma would come and like tell the teachers, like, this is how it was, and this is what our eagle feathers mean. And it would be the same thing the next year. And I would just swallow it because it was just like, oh, everybody just does that. But then things changed once I became a mother myself, and I seen my girls, and we live in the suburbs, and like I sent them to Catholic school, and I would see it in our schools, and I
mm,
would be like, what is going on?
mm,
There's such a disconnect here. And so that's how all of this started. I also went through some health issues. Um, I I've been pretty much a nerd my whole life. So, I went through school, loved school, went to college, did the right thing, the whole white picket fence. And then I got stage 3 thyroid cancer like overnight. I
mm,
thought I was having a panic attack, and it wasn't. I was like, I would jog, trying to stay fit. And I was wondering why, like, when I would be talking, it would be hard to breathe, and I was like, am I asthmatic? And that diagnosis came, and I was really upset about it. I was mad. And I used to say, I would pray to God, like, why would you do this to me? I have 2 kids, I'm trying to do, what I feel like leaving, like walking in a good way with you. And you know, I was trying to overcome that, and I wrote my first book, Akka's Medicine. And that was like my medicine. Like, I would do a lot of walking, a lot of running as I was doing treatments, and I would pray a lot when that, like, to help, because I always remember my grandma would tell me, like, when you need answers and they're not coming to you, you need to pray about it when you're by yourself. And I did that. And it was like as if I heard like a whisper. I was outside, and it was like, right. And I thought, well, what should I write about? And I'm like, I'm just a preschool teacher. I have no idea what to write about. And then that's when my daughter came home really upset about what happened at school, with this disconnect of what Indigenous people are and how to properly represent us in schools. And that was my mission. I was like, okay, I'm going to write this book, and hopefully I won't have to always be going to the office and talking to principals. And maybe if I start with children on explaining something so basic that children can understand it, maybe even grown-ups can. And not much longer, not even a year, I ended up having a heart attack. And I had 2 of them, and I had 2 stents put in my heart. And I was very ticked off with the Lord, like, what is going on? I'm doing what I thought you wanted me to do. And that's when I wrote I Am Not a Costume. And I did a lot of ceremony, a lot of praying. And like now I feel like the reason why these things happen to me is because there's probably no other way that these books and this message would have ever been put out, because I needed a big awakening, like there was something more I was supposed to do. And that's where I feel like all of this came from.
Wow. There's so much I would love to comment on that. Well, first of all, can I ask, can we see your shirt? Because
Ah,
I've been telling the Kateri people, she's one of you. She's there you are, Kateri Center of Chicago. All right, well,
yeah.
that'll give you some I'll get you in the cross and feathers actually. Actually, you actually are gonna be in the cross and feathers because
Oh my gosh.
they asked me about it. They're like, hey, is there anything we should put in the cross and feathers? I was like, yeah, put it in Maria's book. I've been telling you. I've
Yeah.
been telling you. Gosh. Man, there's so many things I want to ask you about that. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing. You're asking the question, why are you allowing me to go through these things? And then you're led to the point where this book comes out. And then you realize that's why I had to go through these things to get to this point. Uh, I think it's interesting how, I when I first began to discern the call to the priesthood, I used to say, well, I'm not Jonah. I'm not going to tell God no. I just need to know for sure because this is a big ask. And so I think sometimes we're all Jonah. Sometimes we all have to be put in the belly of the whale for 3 days before we're willing to go to Nineveh. And it's interesting how God works in those ways. But for you as a person of mixed, you said your grandmother was Arikara, and then you have Anishinaabe as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
My grandpa is the one that's Anishinaabe.
Okay. So then you have right. So you have the two connections, the Arikara and the Anishinaabe, and then you have the mix, and of course you grew up reservation and in the city.
Yeah.
And there's the ceremonial ways and there's the church ways. You're a balance. You're walking in two worlds, literally. I mean, in the sense that we talk about that. What is that like for you? Because some people find that the two are complementary to each other, as I believe they are. Others don't think that they should be mixed at all or that you can mix them. And, not that long ago, back in your grandparents' generation, especially in the boarding schools, they would have been completely forbidden.
I grew up thinking that I believing it was normal because of my grandma, and she was one of the founding members of St. Kateri Church in Chicago. She and another of some more groups of people got together and they founded that church. So she would share not a whole lot about boarding school, but enough for me to know not to ask too many questions.
Hmm. Yeah.
She did always share though, like because when she would go back home and she would talk about praying and going to church, practicing ceremony, some relatives kind of ridiculed her for about it. So she kind of like prepared me and my siblings about that. She's, and say like not a lot of Native people will be Christian or specifically Catholic because of boarding schools. But she told me that from her grandparents, because her grandparents mainly raised her, she told me that um, her grandfather would be the main person to teach everything for her spirituality to her. And they were really poor and they didn't have a lot of food. So the boarding schools, they would do kind of like Bible school during the day, and they would tell the kids like, "We'll feed you if you come."
Oh,
And so my grandma, her grandparents would send her so she could eat, and they didn't have to have that burden. So she would go, but they would at the same time teach her about spirituality and things like this. And they would say, like you're a pagan, you can't do things like you're not supposed to do that. And my grandma would go back to my grandfather, and he would be like, that's not that's not what we're doing, and he would have to. So she was like the messenger that would go in between the
mm,
priests and then my great grandfather. And she was like the person who had to make sense of it. Like, oh, they meant, they think that we worship like the trees and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And here she's like, that's not what we mean. And then she started learning how to put things together, and she met other natives that were like her. Like she respected the the Bible and how there were a lot of similarities in Christianity
Yeah.
in traditional ways. And she thought the one thing that she took away from boarding school was like her faith, and that she felt like and she always had told me, just because the boarding schools did, bad things to native children, that they weren't really representing, Christ, that they were hiding behind their black robes in order to do negative things, but that was in no way God's work. And so she told me it was kind of like a true test of faith, that for you to, yes, she went through like horrible things along with lots of other people, but that doesn't mean you stop believing because of what those people did. And because she put it so plainly to me as a child, I grew up believing that. And and it is hard because I will see like on social media and things like that, a lot of natives are like, you're not truly native if you are a Christian. And I just believe, I don't think at all, like, how come you have to choose one or the other? I feel like you can be both. And I raise my children like that too, because they ask me the same questions. Like, how can we believe when there's so many people that,
Mhm.
that? And I was like, well, if that's the case, then we would have nobody in our community. There's so many things that have gone wrong in our world that we can't dismiss, a whole race of people or a whole group of the whole Catholic community or Christianity community because of what, you know, a group of people did. And I think with some Native people, it's hard conversation to have. A lot of people need a lot of healing and that. Um, but I think they're missing the bigger picture, that those were really bad people, but the positive message behind it was that they could be both.
The more you learn about different native spiritual practices, the more you see the similarities. Like, for example, uh, I was visiting on a reservation and in a Northern Plains reservation in which these people are some of the many, many, many people who practice the sun dance, and they were in their Catholic church. The priest was showing me how the local artists had done the Stations of the Cross, depicting Christ as if he were a member of that tribe, and they were showing Christ as a sun dancer. And I said, honestly, that's the most perfect analogy of Christ's sacrifice that I've ever seen. Natives understand what it means to offer your flesh for the benefit of everyone else more than anyone. St. Paul in his writings says, we preach Christ crucified, which is, an absurdity, an anathema, to the Greeks, and a curse to the Jews. These so-called civilized societies, the Jews and the Greeks, could not understand the crucifixion as a sacrifice, but native people, supposedly primitive people, they were like, yeah, that's us, that's our beliefs, that's what we believe. We understand that he must have been a native man. And that's what I've been told several times, like, on reservations, like, well, when we first heard about Christ, we thought, well, he must have been a native. There are those who would say you're either all of this one thing, ceremonial, traditional, whatever, or you're all this other thing, this Christian, Catholic, whatever. To me, I think the blend is beautiful. Isn't it great to have so many different colors in your palette that you can paint from?
I think so. I mean, because I feel like, it's nice to have the option because to me, like, there's sometimes, like, because I live in the suburbs, I'm not going to be able to go to a sweat or, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's something that's got to be planned. I can't go to ceremony right away, but, I can go to church though. I mean, I can go talk to a priest. I mean, and then there's, like, well, if I can't get to a church, I can always put my asema down and I can go outside and pray. I mean, it's kind of nice, like, it's wherever you feel stronger to go to at
Mhm.
that time. And it's kind of nice to have those options.
Yeah, or you can smudge. I mean, you can do all
Yeah,
those things, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be able to do that. And um, I feel like it's even more beautiful, like when I go to like St. Kateri Church and they have the blend of like smudging and things of that, using the eagle feather and being able to sing like our songs at church. And it's really nice to have both of those together.
One of the things that I think people that I've talked to about your book appreciate the most is that you, um, in your own very humble, very um, respectful way, you as a very uh, loving, nurturing mother, teacher, wife, etc. You know, you wrote a book which is not angry and it's not preachy and it's not yelling at anyone. And I think a lot of times uh, when one segment of society is in error of ignorance, as in the case of natives and costumes, or we could even extend that to mascots. Um, I think a lot of times the society that's guilty of those infringements uh, feel defensive when you call them out on it. And a lot of times people are very quick to want to argue with you. They don't want to receive what you're saying because they feel like you're pointing the finger at them personally.
Yeah.
Um, and yet with your book, you take an approach, which I just absolutely love. The girl, you know, Ayasha doesn't, throw this fit or this tantrum or get, show her anger about it. She uses it as a teaching moment so that the grandmother and the family, they come in to the school to say, let us share our culture with you so that you can understand and appreciate why it's important to us. That's such a beautiful message, and I think one of the reasons why so many people from non-native communities have responded to this book is exactly that. You're not yelling at anyone, you're not coming from a position of being angry, but surely these kinds of incidents must make you angry.
When I talk to teachers and when I was talking about my daughters going to school and things of that nature, I would try to be as calm as possible in the office, talking to the principals and teachers about like this, this is very harmful, like this is not accurate portrayal of Indigenous people, yada, yada, yada. And it was just such tension in the room. And no matter how nicely I said it, or how sometimes I would be really upset about it, it was just not, the message was not received very well. And so I felt like, okay, we need to come up with, um, instead of saying this is bad, what is a way that we can change this positively? And that's when we were coming up with the idea, how about we come to the school and we explain about our regalia? And my grandma had done that before too, way back in the day with me. And, she came in her regalia and talked about it. And when I did have to go again with my daughters,
Yeah.
it was better received when it was something like that, like how about I come into the classroom and tell you guys what this means? Or, instead of saying, take that down off of the wall,
Yeah.
that's offensive.
Right.
So I kept trying to think about it from a teacher's perspective. Like, okay, it's November, Thanksgiving is coming up. We need to like celebrate this holiday in some way. Well, if I can't put these things up on the wall, what am I supposed to do? And I feel like that's what was going on with teachers. They were like, what else are we supposed to do? Because they've
Right.
been doing the same thing for so long. We're like, well, we need to replace it with something. And I just thought, coming in with these are options that
Yeah.
you can do. These are people, there's even in Chicago, it's called the Black Hawk dance
Yeah.
group. There's plenty of them. And just about every state, every city, there's an indigenous dance group that can come in, or there's elders that can come in and talk.
Mm.
And there's so many storytellers, and just coming up with positive solutions instead of just attacking
Yeah.
is better received. And
Well, let's
that's why I
stay on
love
this point for a
dance.
second, actually, because you are a school teacher, you work in schools, and so you know the kinds of portrayals of natives, especially between Halloween and Thanksgiving, as you mentioned, and the whole narrative of the pilgrims and all of that. And of course, we know that the story of the first Thanksgiving is a myth,
Yeah.
and that the actual story is not nearly as nice as the portrayal that we hear.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, you must get very frustrated as a Native woman slash educator at that time of the year when you're seeing these well costumes or these portrayals. But for school teachers and people who are well-meaning and who really do care about respecting culture, what do they replace that with? How do you get into, well, I guess, like, for example, we still have pushback in places about the Columbus Day thing. There's people who still don't want to stop having Columbus Day or recognize Indigenous Peoples Day. And then you get to the thing about Halloween and I am not a costume, and then Thanksgiving, and there's people that are afraid of this cancel culture, right? And you have to be able to say, look, this isn't that. Well, that's not what we're doing here. We're trying to educate you so that you understand the truth about certain things. So for educators or people that are maybe not native or not aware of native sensitivities, how do you get that message across? What do they replace it with?
It's true. Like in my classroom, it's the only one in the school. I don't celebrate Thanksgiving. So I've changed it to giving thanks. So like my whole unit that I've been teaching these past couple of years, I don't do Thanksgiving. I do giving thanks. And since I teach such young kiddos, like I'm not going to tell them the whole thing about, what really happened.
Yeah,
I just steer clear from that situation, that part, because that's going to be told. I would hope the real truth will be told to them as they get a little bit older. And I just want to focus on the positive. Let's be thankful and why those things we should be thankful for.
and how do you get that point across to other teachers or to your principal in a way that they can appreciate and respect it without feeling confronted or defensive?
There is a presentation that I've done for educators with the Gitchigamen Museum that's in Evanston, and it's an Indigenous museum. And I was working with them and helping talk to other educators about what we can do in place of that. And I do have this presentation that talks about love. These are some different lessons I've done in the past. This could be for older groups, younger, and just kind of, talking about the Dakota 35. and talking
Hmm.
Abraham Lincoln, what the true story about that is, and what I mean. For me, I promote giving thanks.
It is a virtue to be grateful. It's something that we talk about and preach all the time, and so we should be grateful. We should give thanks, and I think Think that natives give Thank really well. The things that I've seen with native people at powwows and how they start off with, oftentimes they start off with an elder who leads, in prayer, and they're always, saying things like, we're thankful, we're grateful. That's a very It's both a Catholic and also a native virtue that's very highly praised. To give thanks, to be grateful, to be humble. All of these things are really important. And so, again, when people are hearing these kinds of messages from you, sometimes they might, I think sometimes people feel as though they're personally being told, well, this is all your fault. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so your book comes across in such a way that you're not saying that at all. And it's easy to understand, oh, okay, I understand what you're saying. This is important to you. Now I understand that. To share that with someone, to make that gesture, I think is probably a really good way of going about it, which is obviously what you're doing. But you fight battles as a school teacher and as a mom. You have your kids who go, to school, and they have their own encounters, and then they come back to you and they say, "Mom, what's up with this?"
Like I was sharing for Halloween at our school, there was a little girl who dressed up as an indigenous girl in a costume, supposedly. And my daughter came to me at recess time because they were all out in their costumes.
Mhm.
And she was like, look at that, Mama. Like, why is she dressed like that? This is so embarrassing. And I was like, oh my gosh, and I was like, she's looking at me, and I'm like, okay. And I did go to the little girl and I told her, I was like, that costume, it doesn't, that's not how Native people really look, and there could be other things you can dress up as. And then I found out, like, and yeah, I got pulled into the office for that. Supposedly the little girl was supposed to be dressing up as Saint Kateri. And I was like,
Wow.
I'm like, but Saint Kateri didn't look like that either.
Yeah, I can visualize exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I was like, for that point, I'm like, it was coming from a good place.
Yeah.
She wanted to be Saint Kateri. I was like, oh gosh. I'm like, that was a hard one. I left it alone, and I was like, I really hope nobody dresses like that next year. I was like, but
Yeah.
that was a tough
Wow.
one for me. I was like, um, okay. People dressed like Marilyn Monroe and Elvis and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this little girl's trying to dress as Saint Kateri. And I'm like, that's a hard one. I wouldn't even know how to try to dress like her if I wanted to dress up for All Saints Day or something like that. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
a hard one to try to be and not be offensive.
On the one hand, you want to share culture, you want people to appreciate culture, you want to be able to bring people in. Like, for example, when we talk about powwows, we know that a lot of times, especially during contest powwows, a lot of times, between one category, the grass dance, the men's grass dance, between that and the next category, kind of as a filler, a lot of times, they'll call for some intertribals, right? And they'll make it known. Everyone can come into the circle during the intertribal, and everyone's welcome to come into the circle. Spectators, no matter what race they are, you can come into the circle. We're inviting you in to
Yeah.
share this thing with you. That's a good thing. But then you have to draw the line between you saying, okay, I'm going to invite you in to share this with you, and we can share with each other, but this doesn't become yours now.
That is, it's hard. I think I struggle with that myself. Um, I was actually a part of a very small role in the committee for the state of Illinois. A lot of educators came together and that came and created a resource for educators. And there is so much, and it's lesson plans and resources from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. And I I keep that and I shared it with my whole school. Any school that's willing, I'm like here because like you can incorporate indigenous culture in a positive way in education. And there's so many educators that came with so many like indigenous professors that came in and was like so much like STEM and all of that that you can do without trying to emulate us.
Yeah.
We can do a lot of outdoor meaningful math activities outside and
Mhm.
things of that. There's so much other stuff, but I think it's just like not enough training on it for teachers. And that's why it comes out, badly.
I think, you make a distinction earlier. You said, that you recognize that certain things came from a good place,
Yeah.
and that maybe the problem, as you were just saying, is not so much that someone's intentionally trying to be disrespectful or offensive. It's just that they don't know any better. And so
Yeah.
you, as an educator, well, you wear many hats that often are similar. As an educator, as a woman, as a mom, as a wife, as a Native person, um, you can help overcome that ignorance, especially when it's ignorance without malice. For a lot of people, they're getting this message for the first time. Native costumes are not appropriate because of, number one, they're, Native people, these elements are not costumes. Number two, it's not an accurate depiction anyway. And number three, if you're going to put on feathers or something, that's something that you have to earn the right to do that. There's certain things that have to go. You don't just take it upon yourself to go put on feathers and say, "Okay, I'm a Native person." We have to respect each other's dignity. Ultimately, is the point. And for you to help people understand that, you're in a unique position to be able to do that because now you have this vehicle. This is your second book, right? And
Yeah.
and you've started a movement, as someone told you not that long ago. People are talking about it. I am not a costume. It's the perfect blend of understanding, and it comes from a good place, and it's educational, and I'm going to share this with you so you understand its significance without being militant or angry, or like you're saying, take that down, that's offensive. That's resonating with a lot of people. Ultimately, for you, you're writing this book and you're telling this story. And what do you want to come from that?
Um, I want people to indigenous children and people to be able to go to school and feel respected just as any other culture. That's my main goal. I feel like our people have been thought of as, I don't know, sometimes mythical or mystical or just not as the people of today as well. And I feel like I just want us to be, you know live more in harmony with other people, just to be respected. And I want my girls to be able to go to school and not feel, that cringe feeling like, oh gosh, it's October, it's November. I don't want them to go through that, and for future generations to not have that feeling anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So the romanticization of Native people that you talk about, which has been going on for a long time, um, and also the idea that natives are confined to a period of time in the past, but not really afforded the opportunity to be a part of the present, and to say natives are still here. We are still here. We don't. Those are important messages. Do you have hope? that will happen. I think things are getting better. This is my perception. Like I grew up in the 1970s. Things were a lot different. Race relations between white and black were a lot different. Race relations in general were a lot different. And I think things are better now, right? Question mark. I don't know. Do
I
you
think
agree?
things, I think things are getting better because of what's going out in media now. And like we're kind of getting into places that invited to places that we haven't been before, like movies and fashion, things of that nature. Like that's kind of getting out there a little bit, more positively. But I feel like it opens up doors now for I don't know if you noticed, but like it just really grinds my gears when I go into like a store like Five Below or something and you see them selling smudge kits.
Mm,
And I'm just like,
mm,
oh geez, why? So
mm.
it does like open up, like yes, our presence is kind of being more known out there and in a way, but then it's kind of opening doors for things like that. You know? So but I think it is getting better, at least, compared to like my grandparents' time. But we still have a ways to go, I believe.
I agree. Well, would you like to add any closing thoughts or any words in parting before we have to say goodbye?
Oh, just miigwech goshte for having me on. I really enjoyed talking with you. It's
Yeah,
always
likewise.
you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you're great. I really am grateful that I got to meet you and your family, your husband and your daughters back in Alexandria, and then again in Minneapolis, and hopefully, there'll be many other times in the future. I do hope. Oh, speaking of which, my counterpart in the the subcommittee against racism, she and I want to bring you to DC to the Bishops Conference, and we're talking about possibly over the summer, trying to organize that, bringing you out and doing what we call a brown bag thing, which is where the different offices. We will say to the different offices, we're having a brown bag, and the special guest is this person to talk about these things, and so that gives people the opportunity to bring their lunches to this atrium to listen to a speaker talk about an issue. And so the Committee Against Racism said to me, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if we could get her to come out?" I was like, "Well, she's a school teacher. You'd have to do it in the summer, and then there's powwows, and then there's this and there's that." And she's like, "Well, let's talk about like next summer. Let's further down the line." I'm like, "Yeah, that would be great. I would love that. It'd be a great excuse to bring her and her family out, and me just hang out with them, and show them stuff and show them DC." So keep that in your mind as a future invitation. Is somewhere
For sure.
there's a future invitation in there.
I would love to come down. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, introduce you to some of the bishops and have you tell your story.
Oh, that would be awesome. I would love it. That'd be great.
Okay, well then we're gonna do that. That's gonna happen. We're gonna make that happen. So
Okay.
all right, well, I guess we better sign off because we're gonna get timed out here in a minute anyway. So
Okay.
Maria, it's awesome to talk to you. I'm so happy for you. I'm so proud of you. So excited for you and for your success and the success of this book. And God knows I'm advocating and will continue to advocate for the book and the message and just everything about your story. Thank you so much for speaking up. It's sometimes that's the hardest thing to do, isn't it? It's easier to sit quiet and just be discontent sometimes, but then sometimes you just have to speak up. But you did it in a way that's really from the heart, in a way that I think people really appreciate it. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. And thank you for speaking so nicely about my book and that. I really appreciate that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's an easy sell, honestly, because when I went to the departments and the bishops, conference, and I said, look, this is a story we need to be advocating. It's perfect. It's not only perfect in its message, but it's perfect in its approach and the way it comes across. It's a sharing thing. It's a journeying together thing. It's not a, angry thing. And people respond, even though there's certainly grounds for anger there, for sure.
Yeah.
You might have been angry at some points along the way,
Oh
but
yeah.
the end
Like
product,
screaming on the inside, but I'm like, oh God.
oh, Lord help me. Lord help me. I'm about to go off on these people. Oh my goodness. If I see one more smudge kit, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's funny, but not funny. Okay, Maria, you're great. I hope you have a great weekend, and thank you for talking with us. And I hope we talk soon.
All right.
All
Thanks.
right, God bless.
Bye.